Sam Darnold and the Seahawks signing him?
Well, I'm not shocked that they let him go. I'm shocked that this number was the deciding factor. And I say that because there was a lot of grumblings out there that Sam Darnold was going to be around 40 and somewhere around that range. And to get him around the 30-something range, it's like, okay, well, could you have done that?
That's what I'm saying.
So you think Minnesota should cut?
No, I'm not saying that they should have. They always wanted to leave the door open. And that's one thing Kevin O'Connell was saying. We wanted to leave the door open for Sam Darnold to return and make the decision. I think they were more so hoping that Sam Darnold would take less because of the circumstances of what he was going to be walking into if he came back versus going somewhere else where it was kind of unknown. But Seattle, I mean, the writing was kind of on the wall. Once you trade away Geno Smith, you get rid of DK Metcalf, trade him away, you're opening up the room for a guy like Sam Darnold to come in. Now, what he looks like with just one receiver and whoever else you bring in, that is to be seen. I'm not – like, I liked Sam Darnold because of what he was able to do in the situation he was in. I don't know if I like Sam Darnold the same outside of the situation that Minnesota Vikings provided him last year and the weapons that he was surrounded with. So that being said, I'm not shocked that he got this deal because he's deserving of it. The way he performed, despite his last couple games, the end of the regular season against the Detroit Lions, obviously the playoff game against the Rams, he didn't show up, but he performed enough across the board throughout the season to be deserving of a deal like this.
I'm totally with you, Greg, in that he's a question mark still. As great as he was last year, and he was great for the most part, he's still very much a question mark. And I don't mind it at this type of money. 3 years, $100 million, but only $55 million guaranteed. Obviously, you mentioned the players that they've gotten rid of. They're going to go young. They got a quarterback now that's not making a lot of money and try to build around him and put great pieces around him. They already have Smith and Jigba as a receiver. So it's not a bad plan for a team that was kind of stuck in the middle anyway. I'll really be interested to see what he does here because I am iffy on him. I look at 6 bad years for the most part of football. Coach always brings up he was 4-2 in Carolina, and he did take Baker Mayfield's spot, but he didn't put up great numbers as they were winning. And so I'm still looking at 6 bad seasons versus 1 really good season. And so I want to see what he does in a situation that's not ideal. And to me, Nick, Minnesota, it was clear they're going with J.J. McCarthy. They won't win as many games, but for the future, they weren't going to win the NFC anyway with Sam Darnold.
Yeah, and the thing is, I mean, winning 14 games is really, really hard. I mean, that's how many the Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles won in this regular season. So there is obviously value in that, but it also, you can be a really good team or headed in the right direction and not get to that number. So I think we all assume that next year they're not going to win 14 games again. But Wilds, where I'll push back on 2 points. One is, I think we all would assume that next year they weren't going to win 14 games again if they had run it back with Sam Darnold. Like, were any of us, if this story was the Vikings have signed Sam Darnold to a 3-year, $100 million deal, were you going to come on here today and be like, I'm picking the Vikings to win their division? I wasn't.
Well, no,
were you going to come on here today and be like, go ahead?
Don't you?
Sorry.
I believe in if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And the idea that the grass is always greener and that teams are making decisions based off of rookie scales, so you let 14 wins and 4,000 yards walk out for a very reasonable number to be worse next year doesn't make a ton of sense to me. And what bothers me, and this might be totally unfair, and maybe I'm being scarred by Bill Belichick. It bothers me when the coach and the system take precedent over the players. And no matter what, that means on Sam Darnold had a prove-it year, he couldn't have proved it anymore. And it's like, you know what? Actually, it wasn't you. It was me. It was me. It's my system.
Proved it. No, hold on. He could have proved it more.
Everybody loses in the playoffs except Jalen Hurts.
He was
so
bad.
that didn't kill me.
Wilds, hold on. Let me go here, please. Wilds, you have to stop acting like everyone's playoff year that isn't the champion is the same. You're right. Everyone loses in the playoffs except for the team that wins the championship. What's also true is half the teams who are in the playoffs at least win a playoff game. A handful win multiple playoff games. Some even win 3 or 4 playoff games. 4, you're the champion. You can't just put in the same bucket every playoff loss and say it went great when the Vikings' 2 biggest games of the year, this player played his worst football. And
That's okay. Listen, man, it's such so frustrating because, you know, Justin Herbert, you know, didn't look so great. Jordan Love didn't look so great. You know, Patrick Mahomes during this playoff run, he was not necessarily great. He just wasn't. He got rocked, obviously, in the Super Bowl. He did not play well against the Texans. And against the Buffalo Bills, go watch that game, man. Did he make a couple nice plays? Absolutely. But for the most part, all of the big plays were completely schemed. It was completely just, you know, very wide open stuff. And he fumbled the ball himself, you know, so he obviously played far from flawless. Obviously, I'm not saying that Sam Darnold was on the level of Patrick Mahomes, but like all of these guys, you know, Lamar Jackson, that first half was not great. And again, you know, I defended all of these guys, and then that's why I also continued to defend Sam Darnold. But it's just so funny that all the talk after the Super Bowl was about that O-line for the Kansas City Chiefs, and yet people want to just now throw that out with Sam Darnold. And now it's bizarre because you even have Vikings fans be like, oh, yeah, you know, there was a lot of holes in this roster. And so, you know, it makes sense to kind of move on from Sam. And I'm like, well, if you think that there was a ton of holes in this roster, there was problems with the O-line or whatnot, then it's even more remarkable and amazing than what he did then. So, no, I don't think he could have proved it more. The guy was pressured and under duress non-stop in those final 2 games. Just non-stop. You can't put that all on Sam Darnold. It's absurd. Sam Darnold in the wild card. Look at this. Oh, actually here. It actually is adding the Super Bowl. Dropbacks with pressure. That week, all the quarterbacks in the wild card, 27 times. 27 times. That's pretty outrageous. Patrick Mahomes, 17. And he actually had a worse pressure to sack percentage. Sam Darnold was 30%. Patrick Mahomes was 35%. So for those of people who are saying, oh, well, this is a lot of this was on Sam Darnold, he actually technically dealt with the pressure better than Patrick Mahomes. He didn't throw as many interceptions. He didn't take as many sacks. He actually did better under those circumstances when he was pressured. And yet he was pressured almost double the amount. That's remarkable. That's remarkable. In those final 2 games, okay, so week 18 in the wild card round, he was pressured 49 times. 49 times. That's outrageous. Okay, so you know, essentially averaging out to be 25 times a game. That's outrageous. Lamar Jackson, only 30 times. And still a lot. You know, still decent, relatively speaking. 30 times. But again, even when you look at his pressure to sack, so in both those games, as I highlighted that Mahomes was 35, 22%. Which is actually pretty good, relatively speaking. Which means, all things considered, he kind of dealt with the pressure not too bad. It's actually not the worst thing. So we all want to just act like, oh, this was kind of ridiculous and this is all his fault. It's just not the case, quite frankly. It's really not. So, yeah, could he have played better? Sure. But considering what we saw, considering that he was under duress nonstop, only threw the 1 interception, and, you know, took 11 sacks relative to how much pressure he was getting, it's actually kind of decent. And considering we're not treating him like a top 5 quarterback, like we're not treating him like a Mahomes. Like I expect Mahomes to be better in that moment because he's Patrick Mahomes. Just like I would expect Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, right? Like I'm not trying to say that, that Sam Darnold is a top 5, top 4 quarterback. But when he's actually dealing with that better, I don't know, man, kind of means something. So yeah, I mean, I think the Minnesota Vikings as a whole deserve a lot of blame for those 2 losses. It should not fall all on Sam Darnold. That's absurd. It's like blaming Patrick Mahomes for the loss in the Super Bowl. That's absurd. Doesn't make sense. Are they contributors? Absolutely. Absolutely. But like I said about the Kansas City Chiefs and the Eagles, like the Eagles were just a better team, straight up. And in a lot of ways, the Rams, at that point in time, were just a better team. They were better prepared, better coached. Their opening game plan, their opening drive, the way how they attacked from the jump was light years better than anything that the Vikings had planned. Anything. And the Vikings had that same thing the week before against the Lions. And again, Sam Darnold did not play great. Sam Darnold missed some throws against the Lions, etc., etc. But this whole just put it all on Sam Darnold, it really is just, absurd. It is. And again, like we can highlight, Josh Allen having a terrible game against the Houston Texans. We can go through all the quarterbacks who had just really awful bad games. Jared Goff against the Houston Texans. Did he throw like 5 interceptions or something? I forget what the number was. I remember watching that game and it was like something outrageous. Really just kind of sheer luck that on the other side, CJ Stroud was also not playing too great either. So it's just kind of absurd. And we want to keep saying, oh yeah, 6 bad years. I mean, it's play for the New York Jets, we all know are a joke. And same thing with the Carolina Panthers. So he actually played pretty well with the Panthers. And he actually played well in his limited time. Yes, I know it was limited, but he actually played pretty well with the 49ers. So yeah, that matters as well. And the work that he's been putting in with Palmer has been huge. So I do think at this point, too much credit is going to Kevin O'Connell. And I think Kevin O'Connell is a great offensive coach. I really do. And a great quarterback mind. And I think he has a lot of, deserves a lot of credit for the success that the Vikings have had. But we are essentially giving him all of the credit. And none to Sam. And essentially just saying that Sam Darnold was either just in a good system or that this was more of a fluke when compared to his years previously. And the dude has been putting in work. And when Brock Purdy went down against the Ravens and Sam Darnold stepped in, he looked immediate. I mean, he looked awesome, actually. He looked great. He was ready for that moment. Like I said, he had limited time with the 49ers, obviously. But it wasn't bad. When Sam Darnold played with the versus the Rams, they were resting a lot of guys. Christian McCaffrey wasn't playing. Obviously, Brock Purdy wasn't playing. He played pretty good considering what was asked of him. 96.5 rating, 189 yards, 7.3 yards per attempt, 1 touchdown, 16 for 26. Elijah Mitchell was the leading rusher, 14 carries for 52 yards. Not saying a whole lot. Again, I'm not trying to make this argument that Sam Darnold in the past was actually secretly this brilliant player. But when you actually watch the games unfold, and that's why I'm saying look at even against the Ravens, you can't even just look at the box score because you could see how disconnected, for instance, Brock Purdy and the 49ers were against the Ravens in 23. And then Brock Purdy goes down, Sam Darnold enters, and the offense immediately looks better. I mean, it just did in that moment. I'm not saying that he's better than Purdy. I'm not getting in that conversation. But they were able to move the ball down the field. There was a smoothness to it. But then things got desperate, and then you're trying to force the ball down the field because now they're trying to have a comeback. And so that's why it's an incomplete picture. That's why you can't just look at the stats, even against the Rams, even the game that I just kind of highlighted. You actually kind of have to watch that game unfold. And again, at this point, it's hard to remember exactly. I remember the Ravens game more vividly because it was like, I think it was like Monday night or Sunday night football. It was like this big moment. It was supposed to be like the Ravens versus the 49ers, and the Ravens just had their way with them. And I was supposed to signal that the Ravens were going to win the Super Bowl, and I don't think they won the Super Bowl that year. So this constant just doubting of Sam Darnold is just kind of crazy to me when we think about the success that he's had in such inconsistent circumstances. Having to go to different teams, different coaches, playing, and I've said this in like every Sam Darnold video when they keep trying to mention his years past, playing for coaches that no longer exist in the NFL. Playing with players that no longer exist in the NFL. And you're just expecting him to somehow be even remotely great. Even show you signs of him just being pretty good. It's just kind of absurd. It really is. It really is. So I think the Seahawks are going to have a lot of success with Sam Darnold. I think Sam Darnold has significantly evolved and grown as a quarterback. It's going to be fun having to fight against these narratives again, like we did with Sam Darnold and the Vikings. And Nick's saying, "Oh, if they ran it back. If we were talking about Sam Darnold signing with the Minnesota Vikings, but anyone pick them to win the division? Yeah, why not? They almost won the division last year. And you don't think that there's potential that the Lions take a step back with them losing both of their coordinators? There's no risk of that at all. You think the Packers are taking a giant step forward? The Bears, I think they're going to improve, but like they're automatically going to, be better now. They're going to now win the division. Like, why not? I don't understand why are we so quick to say that about the Vikings. So I really am firm in Sam Darnold having a lot more success than people want to give him credit for. And I think unfortunately, no matter what he does this coming season, though, people will still continue to doubt him. But I think we all have to kind of see what this team looks like. I think it's going to be fascinating to see with the new offensive mind, Kubiak, with the Seattle Seahawks and kind of what they're looking to do there. And yeah, I think the Seahawks might be, I got to think of it more, and I got to look at the roster and see what they do and what they continue to do in free agency as well as the draft. But the Seahawks might be my version of the Minnesota fight. My Seahawks, the Seahawks this season, going into this coming season, might be my version of the Vikings last season. How I predicted that the Vikings were going to be a really good team and could legitimately win and be contenders, and that ended up being correct. So I'm not making that claim about Seattle quite yet because, like I said, I want to wait to see how this kind of continues to unfold. But I just, I don't get why it continues to be in vogue to just keep acting like what Sam Darnold did was just kind of like, meh, whatever. It's just absurd. And he wasn't just carried by a great team. He was part of that great team. He was part of that. He was a huge part of that, okay? He wasn't just throwing to wide open Justin Jefferson. He wasn't just handing the ball off and to a running back who's getting 10, 15 yards in chunks. That's just not how it unfolded for Sam. So, but sure, give all the praise to everyone but him. Those are just my thoughts. I'd absolutely love to hear yours. What do you guys all think about Sam Darnold and the Seattle Seahawks agreeing to a 3-year, $100.5 million deal? What do you think this does for the Seattle Seahawks? What do you think this does for the Minnesota Vikings? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single comment, so whether you agree with me or disagree with me, either way, let's get in some discussions. Let's get in some fights. But ultimately, let's just have some fun. And please do consider subscribing. We're building an amazing community here, and I absolutely love to see you part of it. I want to build something that we all genuinely feel connected to. Something that we're really excited to be part of. I think we're all on our way to doing it. Please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, as it really does help the visibility and the algorithm. Thank you so much. See you next time.